Hi, I'm Sam, your resident fantasy reader,
And I'm Morgan, your romance reader, and we welcome you to Just One More Page.
where it's never just one more page.
Hi guys, welcome back to Just One More Page. I'm Morgan, and today I have another guest on the podcast, which is someone you might recognize if you're an old-time listener of our podcast. I have back on Trena. Do you want to say hi?
Hi, I'm so happy to be back. I'm super excited.
Yeah, so last time you were on the podcast, we did what book? It was Horror Hotel, right?
Yes, Horror Hotel for spooky season.
Yes, and that was super fun. Today, we're going to be talking about another spooky book, which I'm excited about because this is like, surprisingly or not, this is like my first, because would you say this is like an adult novel?
Yeah, I'd say so.
So this is my first adult spooky novel. So I was like a little bit nervous about it because I was like, I don't know how I'm gonna do with it, but like it takes place in Vermont, so I was like, ooh, I'm gonna love it anyways because it's taking place in like my home state, which I'm excited about.
That's why I like this author because he is adult, but it's also not like super spooky. It's just the right amount and not YA. So that's why I like Riley Sager. So I was really happy you chose this one.
It's not as spooky as I thought it was going to be. It's more so like a thriller than like a
Yes.
spooky book.
Yeah, I'd say it's like mystery, suspense, thriller more than like any type of horror. I think it'd be good for someone who maybe wants to dabble in horror and get a little spooked, but it's nothing hardcore at all.
I pleasantly enjoyed it and I didn't think it was too spooky at all. Did you want to explain what the book's about and why you decided to choose it?
Yeah, so The House Across the Lake by Riley Sager. So it basically follows Casey, who recently is widowed and has developed a drinking problem dealing with her husband's death. So we kind of just follow Casey. She's at her family's lake house, trying to figure life out. And a bunch of stuff, a bunch of crazy stuff just happens. And we kind of follow her along. I kind of liked it because it's like, I think we all have a little bit of nosy in us. And, you're always kind of curious what other people are doing. So her watching her neighbors, yeah, it's intriguing because you're like, what are they doing? What's going on with them? So I really enjoyed that aspect of it. And yeah, with it being in Vermont, I've only been a few times, but I love Vermont. So I was really excited to kind of dive into that state again. And I like the way they described it. And I felt like I was on the lake with Casey.
I definitely loved it. Also, the nosy neighbor part, I can totally relate to. Not for myself. I'm not a nosy neighbor. I don't like, I will, if I see my neighbors, I dive to the ground because I'm like, no one can know I live in this house. But my dog is so nosy. My dog will come up to my bedroom window, which overlooks the neighborhood, and she'll stick her head right into the window trying to see what everyone's doing. And she's even like knocked over planters. Like one time I had my window up and I had the screen out, and she almost knocked over my plants out of the
Oh my
two-story
gosh.
window. Yeah. She's so nosy. She just like wants to know what everyone's doing.
If only she could talk and just tell you. Then you could be nosy without being nosy.
Yes. Well, she gives me some side eye. She she definitely has a personality, my dog. What did you rate this book?
I gave it a 4, which we'll get into later with the twist. But I gave it a 4, but I really did enjoy it. And when I was looking up reviews, and especially on like TikTok, a lot of people were like, "Oh, I didn't really like this one. It was not my favorite Riley Sager." I can kind of see why after, which we'll get into later with the twist. But
Yeah.
I blew through this book. I was so into it, and the suspense and mystery of it just really pulled me in.
I also looked up reviews afterwards, and I did see a lot of people were saying like, "Oh, I didn't really like it."
Right.
I can see why they didn't like it for reasons why I actually didn't like it too. For some things, like I did like the Vermont aspect. I wonder if the writer is from Vermont or has vacation there because they write Vermont in such a perfect way of how the neighbors always help out each other. Cause like
Yeah.
I grew up in a very small town in Vermont and like you knew your neighbors had your spare keys and everyone knew everyone's business kind of thing. I also, for some reason, I thought like this book took place in the 40s or the 50s. And then when they were talking about Tom, who is the neighbor who lives across the lake, his app, I was like, wait a minute, it's not in the 50s?
I know. Yeah, it really did kind of give off an old-timey vibe in the beginning. And then you're like, no, this is pretty recent. So,
Because they're talking about Instagram.
yes.
In the beginning of it, I was just like a little bit confused. And I was like, wait a minute, nope, modern times, rechanged that in my mind. But it did kind of remind me of this Netflix movie, or maybe it's a TV show. I think it's a movie called The Woman in the Window, which was, I think, originally a book.
Yeah, where she's scared to like leave her house and she's always watching. I didn't see it, but I know I have heard about that.
Kind of remind me of that, but the book does have more twists and turns than The Woman in the Window, and
Hmm.
I really enjoyed the twists and turns in this book, and I felt like the plot twist in the end was definitely came out of left field and made me, like, pause. Like, I was actually listening to this book as an audiobook.
Yeah.
Yes!
I was like, what book am I reading? I was like, did I pick up a different book by accident? What is going on?
Right? Well, I was walking my dog and I got to the like, the plot twist, and I literally stopped, and I was like, "Excuse me? What? What did I just hear in my ears? Like, what?" The plot twist was fantastic, although it does kinda confuse me, and I guess we'll talk about more about it in the spoiler part. I did really enjoy the book, and I like the fact that, you don't really have to like the main character, Casey, in the beginning because she is dealing with her own grief, and she's not, like, the best person. She does deal with alcoholism,
Right.
and she's drinking a lot. I did really, really like the side characters a lot, like Eli and Marnie and even her mom, and I don't know, I don't know if I'd be a nosy neighbor like her, but I definitely enjoyed it.
Yeah, I don't think I could go to her extreme at all. I would definitely feel
Yeah, yeah.
very weird doing what she was doing. But yeah, I did like how there was no like throwaway characters that really the story could have done without. I think the story really was what it was because of everybody that was in it.
Exactly, and I like the fact that it wasn't, like, big cast of characters in it, that it was, like, a small cast of characters that you really got to know, and there was also more than just one storyline going on or one mystery going on, and I don't know, I enjoyed the book. Is there anything else you would like to add into this non-spoiler part, or would you like to go into our spoilers?
I think we can move on to the spoilers because that's, I think, the juicy part, what we really need to talk about.
I wanna talk about what happened so bad. So, if you would like to read this book, then please go do so. If you just wanna stay along and hear us freak out about this plot twist, then please stay and hear us talk about it because I wanna talk about it. Okay, the plot twist. Did you see that coming?
No, I don't know how you could. I have no idea how you could. It literally smacked me in the face. I just stared at my book for a solid minute like what is going on?
Like, so the book started off so fast because, like, I think it was, like, the prologue you have where you think Tom's tied up to the bed and she's,
Right.
like, questioning where Catherine is, his wife is missing where his wife is, and then you come to find
And
out
you think you know. You're like it's for sure Tom. It's for sure Tom tied to the bed and then you get to a point where you're like is it Boone tied to the bed? Like it's got to be Boone, right? And I'm just like, okay, he really Riley Sager.
Yeah, exactly.
I think I've read a book anytime recently that had such twist like out of left field that had my jaw on the floor.
Yeah, this twist was crazy because you think all the time that he has Tom or Boom, or I even thought Eli because I was like, I don't trust anyone in these types of books.
I
But
know,
in
yeah.
reality, it's literally Catherine tied up in her bed who is possessed by Len, who is Casey's ex-husband.
Oh, and look, I'm a supernatural, paranormal girly. Like, I love that stuff, but I was like,
Yeah.
what? I did not see that coming. I'm like, this is like a super, like, just mystery and suspense and with some thrilling moments in there. I was like, why do people not like this book? I'm really into it. And then that happened, and I was like, oh, I was like, I think this is why people don't like it because it's just like, you don't see that coming. There's no hints. You know, if sometimes you'll look back and you'll be like,
Yeah.
oh, that was a hint. That was a hint. I didn't see any hints
Yeah.
personally.
Well, like, the only time we actually learn about the paranormal in this book is that I think Eli tells, like, a ghost story, and that's about it. We don't really even really suspect anything like that.
Yeah, and I just honestly thought that was a little campfire story. I didn't think there was anything, no, nothing to it.
Yeah, me too. I mean, if anything, I always assumed that Tom was the main person who was gonna either, like, kidnap Catherine or killed Catherine, especially with the whole part when Catherine is drinking wine by the fire and she's like, "Oh, I don't feel like myself." And then immediately when, she finds or Casey finds, like, the glass and it has, like, a salt film on it, immediately I was like, "Poison."
Exactly. Yeah, I'm like, he's poisoning her for sure.
But then when it didn't go anywheres.
And then you add that with her drowning and her saying, I didn't feel like myself. And then Casey finds the residue on the glass. I'm like, yeah, he's for sure trying to slowly kill his wife. but that wasn't it at all.
Well, that's what I assumed too. So you're expecting that. You're expecting that it's gonna be Tom tied up, but nope, it's Catherine possessed by Len. And that whole thing about Len being a serial killer and killing these girls and that Casey knew?
Yes. There was like a small part where I was like, I kind of was like, when they started talking about the detective, and she's like, we think Tom's a serial killer. And there was a part of me that was like, maybe it was her ex, but I didn't think she knew. I didn't think Casey knew at all if it was Lynn, but I was kind of suspecting everybody at that point that they could possibly be the serial killer. But when we find out that no, Casey knew this whole time and she's the reason Lynn died, I was like, wow, it was crazy.
I think that the whole concept of her being like finding out that day that her husband is a serial killer and then being like, okay, I'm gonna drug you, take you out into the boat, and then just push you off.
She thought of it so fast. She went to the basement, found it. She was looking stuff up on her phone and like calendar. I'm like, was he not suspicious while she was down there for so long? Because that had to have taken some time, you know? And I was like, and then she just comes up, I'm going to put some Benadryl in his wine a couple times and then take him out on the lake. I'm like, that is some fast thinking. Like, I'm pretty smart, but I don't know if I would have came up with that quickly.
That's a little bit too fast thinking.
Right.
Like, I think if I saw that my husband had driver's license of these missing girls and hair from these missing girls, my first thing would be like, this is suspicious. This is odd. I'm going to the police station.
Right. I would have just wanted to get out of the house without alerting him because I would have been terrified.
Her first reaction is murder, which, by the way, I don't know if I would want to spend time in a place that I murdered someone at.
Right. Obviously, then we realized, well, she's really turned into an alcoholic because I think she was carrying this guilt over things that happened. And so, yeah, going back to that place, I'm like, that's really not going to do you any good. I would be horrified. Like, I would not want anything to do with the lake house after
I
that.
want to step a foot in there. I'd be like, nope, no, thank you. And then also the fact that she's so quick acting, and the next day with Eli being like, oh my god, and like freaking out about her husband dying.
Right. Yeah, when he explained that, oh, you could tell she just woke up and she was like, I mean, she is an actress, so I guess that makes sense how she could pretend. But I'm like, my conscience would never, I could never do that.
I'm too soft to do that. I would go to the police. I would never think about like spending time with him and going out onto the lake. And but I also do like the fact that later on Casey realizes that she did make a mistake because she did not let the families who were affected by like their family members being missing, she didn't allow him getting caught or them like knowing what really happened to their family member that went missing. Part of the guilt she also felt and why she drank so much. By the way, she drinks so much that I'm surprised that she did not get alcohol poisoning.
I know when she's like, oh, I'm on my fourth or fifth bourbon and then I'm going to drink this and drink this. I'm like, my stomach is turning just reading about how much alcohol she's consuming. Just straight alcohol.
Yeah, and then I like in the beginning how she was like, "I'm not an alcoholic." Like, I put down my glass and I count how long it takes me to pick it back up because I can put it down, and but throughout the book, like, you know that she's alcoholic because of the fact that she's like, every single time she's without a drink, she's, like, just thinking about her next drink.
Exactly. I'm like, and if you have to count how long it takes you to pick up the glass, like that's not a normal thought for someone who casually drinks. Definitely have a problem.
Exactly, she definitely had issues with that. So, did you think that Boom killed his wife?
You know, when they explained that whole situation, I was like, oh my gosh, it's Boone upstairs. That's when I was like, it's Boone. Like he killed his wife and then he like killed these other women. He's a psychopath. With the way that his detective friend, what was her name? Wilma?
Well,
I
yeah.
think. She was like covering for him. I'm like, is there more to it? Does she know? Is she in on him being a serial killer? I'm like, my mind is going to all these different ways this book could like twist because that was before we even came to the twist. So yeah, at first I was like, maybe he did kill his wife because he was acting a little suspicious. At that point, you're suspicious of everybody in the book, you know, even Eli. So I mean, that was a good way that this author put that in there to, I mean, it threw me off. It had me questioning, you know.
Yeah, I actually never really consider Boone to be the murderer. I don't know, I just didn't get that feeling from him, although, like, part of me was kinda wondering why he was in the book rather than, like, kinda like a love interest for Casey somewhat and, like, taking care of her. I want him to have a little bit more development in the book and, like, yes, he had this whole side story of his wife falling down the stairs, which also made me think about this case. I actually think it took place in Vermont. I could be wrong, maybe I'm wrong, I don't know, where this guy, his wife fell down the stairs and people were saying that he pushed her down the stairs and then other people are saying like he didn't. I think it's a really popular case. It was a Netflix docu series, which I don't remember what it was called.
Yeah, it sounded vaguely familiar when I was reading it. So I would bet that Riley Sager probably used some aspects of that. I mean, it was pretty similar. I was like, I feel like I've heard this before.
Well, then again, I think about it because he was like, "She committed suicide."
Right.
That's, like, what Boone said, but then again, like, why how I'm just thinking logistically, why would he how would you end your life by throwing yourself down the stair? Like,
Right. I mean, you would have to fall at like the right angle because I feel like falling down the stairs, you're gonna get hurt, but are you really gonna die? I don't know. That was a little, yeah, his character, yeah, for sure was probably the least developed and kind of like, oh, he's got some similarities, like he's a recovering alcoholic. He also lost his spouse. So I get where he was going, the author was going with that, but yeah, it definitely, he could have done a lot more with Boone's character for sure.
do you think there's a reason why Casey became so obsessed with finding Catherine? Do you think it's because she's trying to, like, relieve her own guilt and being able to save someone?
Yeah, probably. I think that she was lonely, sure, bored, and then she met Catherine. I think she just had this, when you meet some people, you kind of just have this instant like connection. And I think she felt that with Catherine. And so with her guilt coupled with that, I think that just turned into her obsession over finding out what happened to Catherine.
Would you have gone to the same, like, extremes to find someone?
I would want to, but like I would probably be second guessing myself. Like, oh, there's like another explanation. But I also do watch and listen to a lot of true crime. So I probably would be, it's always the husband. So I probably would be super suspicious. But like going and like contacting police, that is like a huge step. And like, it was the right step in this book, but I think also with Boone saying he heard the scream, and I think that kind of like egged her on, like, oh no, I need to do this. This is the right thing to do. Something definitely happened. So I think with him kind of agreeing with her that things are odd, that helped push her in that direction.
Yeah, I definitely felt like the scream in the beginning. I thought that it was, like, her drinking and, like, her just hearing things, but
Mhm.
I'm glad that Boone was like, "Oh, no, I heard it too." I do think that she was a little bit too intense in the case, especially when she went over to his house.
Yes. Oh my God. Now that I would never do. I could never. I'm like, oh no, she's not breaking into their house right now. Like, I had so much anxiety reading that part.
I was cringing so hard when she was, like, going through all their stuff. Like, another reason why I thought that Boone was a little sketchy, though, is because he was spying on her
Yeah.
when she went over there, and then when Tom came up, Boone, like, came out and was, like, distracting Tom so that way she could run out.
Yeah, and I'm like, how did he even know she was going over there? Like he had to have been watching her to know she was left and went over there. So it's like, yeah, I think he had his own. But, we don't really get that explained to us in the book. But he obviously had little nosy issues going on.
Feel like everyone did.
Yeah.
Everyone would spy on everyone. Although I do like how, though, this book goes into a full circle of how, like, in the beginning, we think that Tom killed his wife, and then in reality, it's, like, Len's possessing Catherine, and then you think, like, "Oh, that's the end of the book," right? But no. No, Tom has actually is actually trying to kill Catherine, but it confused me why Tom decided to go back over to Casey's side of the lake, trying to, like, kill her.
I don't think it really went into that, like, what made him go over there, what made him suspect Casey was still. Maybe he just thought, she's onto me because she really was. She thought he was poisoning her from the beginning. And they could have definitely went into more detail with what made him go back over to her house and try to kill her. But yeah, I definitely like how we got that big twist. And, sometimes things just kind of in there. But we really did come full circle and see how, like, everybody ended up, which was really nice.
Yeah, and we did get Len's spirit, I guess, killed on land, so hopefully he won't come back again, and hopefully.
Yes, yeah.
Although I do wanna say that, like, when Catherine's still possessed, we find out where the girls' bodies are that Len has killed, which is over in the lake. They go over to that spot, and she decides to make out with Catherine to get or Len to get the spirit of Len in her, and then she takes an anchor, and she throws herself over, like, over the boat, so she'll drown with the ghost in her. But my thought process in this is, wouldn't he still be in the water?
Right. Yeah, I figured leading up to it that that's what she was going to do is try to take her own life to kind of end things. But then he would still be in the lake. So the next person that went and accidentally drowned or whatever in the lake would then become possessed by Lynn again. So that didn't really make a whole lot of sense because he would just go back into the lake.
I guess if you don't really have any, like, another option because, like,
Right.
if, she's just trying to get her out and then be like, "Well, I'm gonna just take my own life because, like, I already feel guilty enough that I didn't catch the fact that you were killing other women," which, by the way, I think that wives or women who are involved with serial killers and they didn't know anything, like, I don't feel like they should be like, I don't feel like they should be held accountable for other people's actions, like, because there's no way that she knew.
Don't ever understand that at all. It's like you look back in history at like Ted Bundy and things like that, and these people are so charismatic that you would never know, and that's literally the point and why they're serial killers and why they get away with it is because you
Yeah.
cannot fathom that. And so these people know how to charm people. You know, you hear it all the time like, oh, he was such a good neighbor, such a nice guy. And then he's got bodies in the basement. I mean, wives, children. I don't think anybody but the person who does the killing should ever be held responsible because how really can you know, unless he's killing people in front of you, how the heck are you gonna how are you gonna know.
Exactly. I mean, no, and I also, like, I felt like that shouldn't have been a reason for her not going forward and talking to the police about it. Because I feel like although she did try, because she sent that postcard to the detective, but it didn't really go anywheres. I don't know, I just felt like things would have been solved a lot easier, but then again, we wouldn't have gotten this book if things were solved that easier if she went to the police herself. But I don't know, I really, really liked the book. The plot twist once again got me. Once again, I was walking and I had to stop mid-walk and be like, "What did I just hear?" Because, like,
I just did not expect a supernatural aspect at all. And I was just like, wow. But that's why I said, like, the book, I think, could have still been great even without that aspect in it. Cause I really enjoyed the book even up until that point. And then I got, smacked in the face with this possession. But then I love the ending too. So I think overall it was a really good book. I enjoyed the read. I flew through it. I think Riley Sager probably meant to get people with that twist because it literally comes out of nowhere.
I wish there was a little bit more buildup with the paranormal, but then again, like, I think that once I got to the paranormal aspect and I was like, my mind was like, "Ooh," but then, like, afterwards, I started to really like the book a lot more, and, like, that paranormal aspect gave that book, like, another twist, which I, like, really enjoyed. Have you read other books from this writer before?
Yeah, so I read Home Before Dark, which that is a spooky one, but again, not super scary. Really, I would say a step above maybe a YA spooky book. And I really, really enjoyed that one. My daughter, my 14-year-old, even read that one, and because she loves spooky things and she loved it. And then I read Lock Every Door, and that one was decent. I gave it 4 stars. It wasn't my favorite, but I think I like this one more than that one. And then I do have his Final Girls book, which I heard is great. So I'm hoping to read that one soon.
Yeah, I'm so glad that we read his book because, like, I'm a scaredy cat when it comes to books. Well, like, real life, I can go into, like, anything spooky. I don't mind. Books, I get too into it and I get so scared. I can't do it.
Yes, it's just different because you like immerse yourself in it. When we got to the possession part, like I love spooky things, but like possessions, that's what really freaks me out. And so I was like, oh, I got the chills. I was like, oh my gosh. But I loved it. And I love that it just, he didn't just give us paranormal and then skipped right over it. You know, once we got that twist, he wrote it out, and I think he did it very well.
I think so too. I definitely would recommend this book for anyone who wants like a little spookiness, not too much. Like a little
Oh, for sure. It would definitely be a great October read if you, because it is in like the fall too, the setting. So I think this would be a great one to read to get you into the spooky season for sure.
Although I think I should have known there was something wrong with Catherine if she's swimming in the fall in Vermont because that's too cold.
Right? I was like, no, thank you. She's like, I do it all the time. I do the polar plunge. I'm like, that's crazy.
I've done the polar plunge once, and that's enough for me because it's too cold. It's too cold. Have you done that or heard of it before?
I've heard of it, but I've never been brave enough to do it. I'm a baby when it comes to being cold. I live in the Midwest, so we get cold winters, but I hate being cold so much that I just don't know if I could ever take the plunge, do a polar plunge.
It's not worth it. It's not worth it. I hate the cold.
I know there's some people I just seen come across on Facebook. They were doing like cold baths, like ice baths, and it's supposed to be good for like your body physically and mentally. And I'm like, I just could never. And they just sit in a tub of ice and water and like hang out. And I was like, no, thank you.
That's not fun to me. That's not fun. No, thank you.
No, I'm like that sounds like torture.
Even if that's, like, healthy for you, no, thank you. I always say this, I'm here for a fun time, not a long time, okay? And, like, I'm not here for ice baths.
Right. Exactly. I don't think it's going to add enough years onto my life to matter. So I'm good.
Exactly. Is there anything else you'd like to add about the book?
No, I think we covered it all. I definitely recommend reading this one, especially if you kind of, you don't like spooky things. I think this is just enough spooky to like anybody can enjoy it. So I definitely recommend giving this one a go.
Yeah, definitely think that you guys should check it out. I definitely enjoyed it and loved it. But, I guess we'll end the podcast here. Would you like to tell everyone where they can find you?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So I am on TikTok at Crack the Spine, same name on Instagram and same name on Goodreads as well.
So, also, if you guys like to find our podcast, you can find us on Spotify, Audible, Apple, and on YouTube. We also have an Instagram, Just One More Page official, and a TikTok, Just One More Page. So, yeah, definitely check out Trina's stuff, and we'll see you guys next week, or I'll see you
Yeah.
next week with a new guest. Okay. Bye.
Bye.